This one glowing chemical discovered by 2 Nobel laureates, which killed almost everyone who touched it. It's known to be one of the most carcinogenic radioactive elements. That resulted into one of the most serious and chilling cases of illness in history. Yes, we are talking about radium. It was discovered by Marie and Pierre Curie while they were working on a uranium ore. After it was discovered, it has been known to have various applications. But what was not known was the fact that this beautiful and glowing element hid a very ugly and disastrous side. But before this side was revealed, it was already too late. The world had already started documenting the radium boom. Radium was everywhere. Radium wasn't just applied on the body externally by adding it in cosmetics, soaps and razor blades, but it was also inside the body, quite literally. To your surprise, let me tell you, one Yale graduate even drank 1,400 bottles of radium-infused water. Now, it wasn't that radium was just another trendy commercial product. It also had medical applications. It was used in many cancer treatments. But the very thing that aimed to save life became the reason for Marie's plight. It's been said that she used to work long hours with radium, that too with bare hands and without any protective gear. Maybe Marie herself wasn't aware of the life-threatening danger of her discovery. She initially suffered from skin burns, but later her discovery of radium, which gave her name and fame, became the reason for her erasure. After suffering from chronic skin damage, following the initial burns, she later died from aplastic anemia due to long-term radium exposure. This discovery proved to be disastrous for Marie, but it was only after it left her lab that the real apocalypse began. This curse of radium didn't just end with her, but rather accursed almost everyone who was exposed to it. Even when Marie was alive, many companies had already started making their own radium. It was soon marketed as a miraculous cure to every ailment and disease, yet it also became the reason for something big and unchangeable: death. Its use became so widespread as if it was sugar, from cosmetics, soap, razor blades, tonics, and even watch dials. All of this led to a massive number of deaths. The glowing dial, which we talked about just now, soon unfolded into one of the most talked about and chilling radium tragedies. Watch dials weren't just painted with radium for their aesthetic appeal or glow, but they served an important purpose, especially during the World War I. These glowing watch dials helped soldiers survive at night or in low-light environments. These glowing dials might have proved life-saving for soldiers, but these same dials were taking away someone else's life. United States. Radium corporations, situated in New Jersey, employed many women and teenage girls to paint these watch dials with radium. Soon these painters became the most notable victim of radium. The US Radium Corps purposefully hired women and teens because they had smaller hands, which was very much needed to paint the dials with more details. Now, to carry out their work more precisely, these painters, which are also known as radium girls, used a distinct technique. What they actually did was pointing the brushes they were using to paint on their lips to create a finer tip. Now this same technique, which was making their work easier, also became the reason for their later hardships. Surely it brought them hardships, but the job had its own allure, as it was well paid. and made them glow in a literal sense. Their clothes, hair, and skin all glowed due to their daily exposure to radium. Many of these radium girls also wore their most favorite outfits to work. So when they left from their work, they left with all their outfits glowing. Some even painted their teeth for a glowing smile, but all the trivial fun they had made them repay with their life. Not only were these girls exposed to radium without any proper safety precautions, but now they were also ingesting a small amount of every time they used their distinct painting technique. Feels quite terrifying to imagine. Where in our modern world, most students aren't allowed to eat or even drink water in their chemistry laboratory. These painters were allowed to not only eat in this hazardous environment, but were working without any safety precautions or gears. It's surely a shocking thing for us to know, but for them, it was just another mundane day at work, because they were reassured for radium's safety by their employers. Ironically, the owners themselves didn't believe in their own claims, because they themselves avoided any exposure to it. The chemists employed at the plant used lead screens, tongs, and masks. This claim to safety, which was propagated to their painters, soon proved itself to be otherwise, starting with the case of one woman, Amelia Molly Magyar, one of the radium girls, became the evidence of radium's hazardous effects. She first started to experience physical ailments. Her first ever recorded ailment was a toothache, which then needed an extraction, but the issue didn't end with that. Painful ulcers all developed in the place of that extraction. This seemingly mysterious ailment then reached all throughout her body, affecting her lower jaw, which subsequently had to be removed. Later, in 1922, she passed away due to a massive hemorrhage, all due to radium poisoning. However, the doctors stated a different cause for her death, mainly to ruin her reputation. It was stated that she suffered from syphilis and not radium poisoning, though Amelia was the first case of such a tragedy, but sadly, not the last. After her death, more such cases started surfacing. More and more radium girls started falling ill, near to death. By the year 1924, 50 of these women workers fell ill, and 12 of them passed away. Many of them even experienced symptoms similar to Magyar, and sometimes much more. Experiencing anemia, bone fracture, menstrual suppression, or even more extreme, sterility. And if somehow some painter didn't become sterile, it didn't mean that they experienced a healthy pregnancy. Their pregnancies mostly resulted in stillbirths, or sometimes they were even advised to terminate it. This was because the fetuses didn't develop properly. But even after all these cases of recorded physical suffering, justice didn't follow quite naturally. The company these girls worked under denied any connection between their deaths, illnesses, and rhodium exposure. Now, parallel to all of these was another corporation named Radium Dial Company, which was founded in Ottawa, Illinois, in the year 1922. Just as the United States Radium Corporation, this company also painted the dials for the clocks with radium and hired women, and made them use the same technique of putting the brush tip on their lips. This company mainly painted dials for clocks of a big corporation named West Clocks. But just as radium exposure proved to be fatal in the case of the US Radium Corporation, the same happened in this company. The curse of radium spared no one, and the dial painters of this company, even they started falling ill due to radium poisoning. Now, as shocking as it may sound, all these new cases of radium poisoning were happening while the radium girls from the US Radium Corps were filing lawsuits against their company. But this time, The tables had turned, and the luck was more in the Radium Girls' side. Previously, the US Radium Corps had denied the connection between their workers' death and illness. But this time, that denial was unable to save them. But what happened next was beyond anything they expected. These cases of radium poisoning created controversies and public uproar. This negative publicity hit hard on them. The company's reputation and profits all began to crumble. Though they suffered, it was not the end for them. They came back with a strategy to save their business. This time, their approach was scientific. They basically commissioned an independent study. This strategy, however, failed to help them, as the result of this study also confirmed the relation between the workers' death and radium exposure. Of course, a study like this was not serving their interests. So what did they do next? Accept their fault? No, they conducted one more study. Now this new study did work like a damage control because it gave the opposite conclusion. It denied any connection between the Radium Girls' death and radium exposure. This new finding worked in their favour, and people continued using radium products, assuming it was safe. Though this new study helped their business get back on track, not everyone believed in its conclusion. As in the year 1925, Harrison Markland, who was a pathologist, conducted a test which supported the first study and again confirmed its conclusion. This test concluded that the workers suffered from radium poisoning internally. It was obvious that this study would again damage the newly built reputation of the radium industry, so they tried to discredit it. But in the year 1927 and 1928, something happened which shook the US radium corporations. Grace Fryer, Edna Hussman, Catherine Schaub, Quinta MacDonald, and Albina Laris. These were the 5 dial painters who decided to file a lawsuit against the radium corporations. Some documented reports about these women reveal something really gut-wrenching. In our today's time, the maximum limit for safe radium exposure is considered to be 0.1 microcurie, while these women had ingested anywhere around a few hundreds to a few thousands microcuries of radium in a year. But even in this plight, the Radium Girls stood up for themselves and fought back. But as we all know, when individuals try to fight against big corporations, it's never an easy task. The girls themselves met with a lot of hurdles and disappointment. Many attorneys were simply not ready to stand in opposition to a big company, and others were simply not ready. But the girls still persisted, and soon help arrived. Mr. Raymond Berry, an attorney, agreed to represent their case. This happened in the year 1927. This incident did help their cause and represented their case in court, but it still wasn't able to save them from one big irreversible tragedy: death. Most of these girls were seriously ill, so much so. 2 of these women were not even able to raise their arms for oath-taking, and many of these painters just had a few months to live. Due to this, they weren't able to undergo a full trial in court and were forced to accept an out-of-court settlement. They were granted $10,000 compensation and along with it, lifelong medical care and annuity. The justice was being served, but it could not have been without public outrage. Though the compensation wasn't able to give them their life or health back, their efforts were still not wasteful or vain. It's only through such cases radium safety became an important issue. The outburst of radium poisoning, then a legal case that followed, a court settlement. It all seems like a happy ending, right? Well, the practice of radium dial painting still continued, and the workers kept getting sick and dying. Now, all of this kept happening because the US corporations still denied their responsibility. But in 1938, things took a turn, and this time for the better cause. Catherine Wolfe Donahue, who was also a radium girl, sued the radium company for her illness. This legal battle was successfully won. Many dial painters passed away due to radium poisoning, yet with their death, they saved many lives. It's only after these incidents changes were brought into the National Labour Safety Standards regulations. Safety precautions were followed, and the dial painters were given safety gears, saving potential lives. Later, a bill was passed, which proved to be really important, changing workers' lives forever. Previously, workers were unable to seek compensation for occupational disease after 2 years, even if they discovered their diseases later, due to statute of limitation. In the year 1949, this statute was changed. The timeline for the workers to discover their illnesses and demand compensation was extended, proving to change the workers' lives for the better. In spite of all the legal battles, though, radium painting was still carried out till the 1960s. This glowing chemical, though, wasn't just on watch dials, but it also had a very special purpose. There was a group of practitioners who promoted something known as mild radium therapy. In this therapy, the patient had to ingest a small amount, around a few micrograms, of radium and its isotopes. This therapy, with supposed health benefits, soon resulted in one of the most horrific cases of illness. It was marketed as a cure for the living dead. You might wonder, what was exactly in this tonic? Well, this recipe had at least 1 microcurie of radium in every ½ ounce of distilled water. The radium used in this was the 226 and 228 isotopes of it. This tonic was called Radithor, and it proved to be a massive success, selling around 400,000 bottles worldwide between the years 1925 and 1930s. Though this product was popular, it wasn't affordable. That being said, it was mostly popular among the American rich and athletes. And so, it became one wealthy Yale graduate's preferred healing drink. Eben Byers, who was also an industrialist, athlete, and socialite, started consuming Radithor for its healing benefits. This so-called living cure, however, proved itself to be the curse of death, which would change Byers' life forever. Byers was a player of golf and polo, but one terrible day, he fell off a train and injured his shoulder. The injury surely impacted his shoulder, but the medicine he chose impacted his life for the worse. It is stated that he consumed around 1,400 bottles of Radithor. His physiotherapist recommended him to drink it after every meal. This tonic was also popularized as something that could restore energy, cure sexual impotence, and treat over 150 diseases, ranging from arthritis to fatigue. Byers consistently consumed this drink from the year 1927 to 1932, and this consistent consumption made all of his teeth fall out. Yet that wasn't the most chilling thing that happened to him, because Radithor also made his jaw fall out, something which was known as radium jaw. This tonic even created holes in his skull. Nobody would have ever imagined that any treatment could have such brutal effects, later costing him his life. In the year 1932, Byers passed away with multiple cancers, with high radium exposure being the obvious cause behind it, and his body was buried in a lead coffin. He did pass away, but something in him is still very much alive. His body is still considered radioactive, even to this day. In a way, the radium he consumed is still living in his dead body. His death was quite impactful. It sparked public outrage. This made the FDA's authoritative power stronger and led to the decline of most patents of radium-based medicines. It does seem shocking to imagine how one commercial product brought such intense destruction. But what was more shocking was its origin. This product was manufactured by the Bailey Radium Laboratories, and its owner, William Bailey, was not even a medical doctor. This trend of buying trendy products blindly seems to be a common thing in every generation. But the good part is, this glowing chemical, which was everywhere and literally shook an entire generation, is no longer that widely used. It is now mostly used in research. Now we no longer have glowing watches or clocks. But hey, at least we got something better instead: our life and well-being. You might still wonder, how do we still have glow-in-the-dark toys if we stopped using radium? Well, those toys are made up of chemicals like zinc sulfide or strontium aluminate, and not radium. These chemicals absorb light and release it later. This way, we don't have to be worried about touching it, like we still do for Marie Curie's notes. It's been stated that her handwritten notes, notebooks, and even her other belongings are highly radioactive. Even to this day, they are stored in lead boxes. These boxes have a special purpose, and that is protecting visitors and others from these radiations. Some museums and archives have taken a step further and stored them under strict radiological control. Seems very ironic to know, a discovery acclaimed by 2 Nobel Prizes, which made everything glow, now simply sits on many people's graves.